It is my pleasure to introduce the speaker for today, Reverend Kathy Boffman. I have a biographical note about her, but I've lost it. But I'll find it in a minute. All right, here we go. Kathy Boffman moved to Arizona in September of 2006 to take a position as a staff chaplain at Mayo Clinic Hospital in Phoenix. At age 50, she transitioned from a long career as a nurse therapist for children and their families to one as a minister. She graduated in 2005 from United Theological Seminary of the Twin Cities. Kathy was ordained to the UU ministry in 2008 at the UU Fellowship of Topeka, Kansas. Since 1985, she has been involved with UU congregations in Michigan, Kansas, and Minnesota. Kathy is a member of the UU Congregation of Phoenix.
Thank you, Jen. It's always lovely to be back here with you. Can everyone hear me okay? And just signal me if I'm not close enough to the mic. I'm going to speak about mysticism this morning, but first I wanted to do a reading, and this is from the Reverend Barbara Brown Taylor, who is an Episcopal minister, and she is a very engaging preacher. And I knew her in seminary as one of the best preachers in the United States in the Christian tradition. She has since left the Episcopal ministry somewhat in protest of some of their stands, not their stands, but the conflict within the Episcopal tradition around being welcoming to gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender people, and in ordaining them within their tradition. So she considers herself somewhat of a rebel in training. So this is her words from a book entitled An Altar in the World. When I was 7, my family lived in Dublin, Ohio. All I can remember of our house is the small wooden deck that opened off my parents' second-story bedroom, where I lay flat on my back the first time I saw a shower of falling stars. On the night I'm remembering, my father told me to pull the pale blue blanket off of the bed and bring it to the deck. The air was sweet and cool. The sky bristled with stars, and my father had folded the blanket in half. He lay down on it with his hands folded behind his head. Katie, my sister, and I lay down beside him, one under each elbow, where we could smell the chapstick, tobacco, strong coffee smell of our father. If he explained what we were looking for, I do not remember what he said. All I remember is lying there beside him, looking into the sky I had never really looked into before, or at least never for so long. When I breathed in, I seemed huge to myself. I felt as much a part of the sky as a feather on a bird's belly. When I breathed out, I became so small that I feared I might vanish. What was a 7-year-old girl under the weight of the stars? When the first one fell, we all gasped and clutched one another. Did you see that? I did. Where did it go? To the far side of the moon. Watching them, I gained an understanding that the planet I was lying on looked like a star from somewhere else in the universe. It too might fall at any moment, taking me along with it. This understanding made my stomach flip even as it increased my investment in what was going on above my head. I learned reverence from my father. For him, it had nothing to do with religion and very little to do with God. I think it may have had something to do with his having been a soldier, since the exercise of reverence generally includes knowing your rank in the overall scheme of things. From him, I learned by example that reverence was the proper attitude of a small and curious human being in a vast and fascinating world of experience. Full appreciation of it required frequent adventures, grand projects, honed skills, and feats of daring. Above all, it required close attention to the way things worked, including one's own participation in their working or not working. Oh, the mystical secrets we keep. So what is mysticism, and why on earth would people feel the need to keep mystical experiences secret? As to the first question about defining mysticism, we turn to UU sources of wisdom. The first source statement in the UU Principles and Purposes gives a compelling description of mysticism as this: it is direct experience of that transcending mystery and wonder that is affirmed in all cultures, which moves us to the renewal of the spirit and an openness to the forces that create and uphold life. Matthew Fox, a former Dominican priest and theologian who was expelled from his order for his unorthodox teachings, emphasizes another aspect of mysticism. His heresy was teaching that we were not originally cursed, we were originally blessed. But this is what he says about mysticism. He says it is our deep experience of unity with nature, with music, with friends, with truth, with God. It is a work of the right brain more than the left brain. It is the essence of authentic religion, and it is about experiencing, not intellectualizing. Aspects of mysticism that are highlighted in these descriptions are direct transcendent experience, spiritual renewal, openness, and direct experiences of unity. As to the second question, why on earth would people feel the need to keep mystical experiences secret? People are usually highly selective about the people with whom they share their mystical experiences. Such selectivity may relate to people's fears of being perceived by others as out there in left field, superstitious and naive, or captive to some spiritual woo-wooism, which is a term that my brother loves to use about certain types of spirituality. Or people may fear that they are losing their minds when they have unbidden mystical experiences. I want to tell you the story of one of my dear friends, and then a woman that I worked with in a residential nursing facility. The first is Roseanne. She was my beloved friend and continues to be my beloved friend in graduate school at the University of Michigan when we were getting our master's in nursing. Shortly after we graduated, her beloved sister Marie died. She died of leukemia. She was just 18. She had had a bone marrow transplant because at that time they were not doing stem cell transplants, they were only doing marrow, and she did not survive. I had not seen Roseanne since Marie's death. When we attended a baby shower for a mutual friend, Roseanne's grief was painfully palpable. We left the shower at the same time so we could have some private time together. Roseanne said to me, "Kathy, I need to tell you something about Marie because I know you won't think I'm crazy. Now, we were both advanced registered nurse practitioners in psychiatry, but she was afraid of talking about a mystical experience that some people might term, quote, crazy. She went on to talk about how immobilizing her grief was immediately following Marie's death. She couldn't eat, she couldn't sleep. Then she told of her mystical experience. When Roseanne was struggling yet another night to try to fall asleep, Marie appeared to her. Marie said, "Roseanne, I'm okay, and you can stop worrying." Roseanne's heart was still broken over the loss of her little sister, but her anxiety dissolved and she was finally able to sleep, eat, and slowly re-engage with life. Then there was Robina, lively 96-year-old Scottish woman who, by herself at the tender age of 15, immigrated from Scotland to America. She was fully engaged in her life, but also knew at her advanced age it was drawing to a close. As the nurse in a small private nursing home, I loved to stop by Robina's room. We had the most stimulating and delightful conversations. One day she said, and she always had a twinkle in her eye, she said, "Kathy, I have something to tell you that happened the other night." Robina went on to tell me of seeing her best friend, who had died 20 years ago earlier, standing at the foot of her bed. Her friend didn't speak. She just stood there lovingly, looking at her dear old friend. And then with a twinkle in her eye, Robina asked me a rhetorical question. She said, "Am I going crazy?" I assured her she was not. She knew she wasn't. We went on to talk about this friend, how much she loved her and how much she missed her, and how Robina was looking forward to a sweet reunion with her dear friend after her own death, because that was her belief, that she would be reunited with those she loved. Now, Roseanne's and Robina's stories testify to the fact that mystery comes near to us in dramatic ways that profoundly touch our spirits and transform us. Why is it that so few of us talk openly about these experiences? Why do we often hear or give the defensive caveat, "I must be crazy, but," before we share a story of mystery coming near in our lives? It happened just this week with one of my patients who said God said to him in aviation language, "I've got your 6." That means that when pilots are flying in combat and in formation, someone's always got your back because they fly according to the clock when they reference what might be coming at them from one direction or another, and 6 is your back. So if God had his 6, God had his back. And he really hadn't shared that with many people. Children are typically natural with mystical experiences. I remember feeling a deep affinity with nature as a small child. I would go out to the windrow of tall pine trees bordering my grandparents' house. I would lie down on the soft pine needles, look up at the huge trees, and listen and feel the gentle wind and the whistle of that wind through those pine needles. I felt safe, loved, a part of something grand, and in awe of those great trees that had long ago been planted by the Civilian Conservation Corps. Nature has always been a place of spiritual solace for me. It didn't confuse me like the fundamentalist theology of my childhood faith. Adults often have a difficult time opening to wonder and mystery. Our ease with such opening gets blocked by skepticism, rational thinking, and a lack of practice. So, I would like to give you an opportunity to engage in your own experience of wonder. So I want to shift the focus away from words. I want to do something very contemplative. I want to do a guided meditation with you. And my hope is that you will have a direct experience of engaging your spirits in a sense of wonder and mystery. So I invite you to make yourselves as comfortable as you can in your chairs. Usually it helps to put both feet on the floor. While we can't touch the earth is under there. That grounds us a little bit more. You can close your eyes if you're comfortable with that. Some people are more comfortable when they're doing something that's more meditative with their eyes open. And then I want us to take 3 deep breaths in and out, and I want you to breathe in and hold it just for a few seconds and then breathe out. And when you breathe out in, I want you to think of the word wonder. And when you breathe out, I want you to think of the word mystery. And we're going to do that 3 times. So let's breathe in wonder, hold it, and breathe out mystery. Breathe in wonder, and breathe out mystery. And one more time. Breathe in wonder, and breathe out mystery. I want you to stay in that state. Now I want you to think about a time when you were entranced, like Barbara was in our reading, by the night sky full of stars and the moon. We have a full moon now, so think of the sky from last night. Try to bring back as much sensory memory as you can of when you were watching this sky full of stars and a great full harvest moon. Think about these questions. Where were you? How old were you? Were you with someone? Were you alone? Were you lying down looking at the sky? What did you see? What did you smell? What did you feel on your skin, in your hair? What did you hear? What thoughts did you have? What feelings bubbled up in your spirit? And how does it feel for you now to remember this experience of wonder and mystery with the night sky? I will give you some silent time with your memories, and then I will invite you back to the sanctuary. And softly and gently, I would invite you to open your eyes and re-engage what's going on around you. Welcome back. I invite you to share with your family and friends, and even at your fellowship time, your coffee hour, and throughout the day, some of the memories and the experiences that you had in remembering a night sky full of wonder. Clearly, transcending mystery and wonder abound in the universe, and we have a need to share our mystical experiences with each other. We know this in part because every religious tradition has its mystics, and they have written of their experiences. Julian of Norwich, Hildegard of Bingen, St. Francis of Assisi, Howard Thurman, and Meister Eckhart are beloved mystics from the Christian tradition. The Jewish tradition has Abraham Joshua Heschel, and those from the Kabbalah mystical tradition. Jalal ad-Din Muhammad Rumi and other Sufi poets come from the Islamic mystic tradition. Thich Nhat Hanh is a Vietnamese monk and mystic who practices engaged Buddhism. All of these mystics had a need to share their transcendent experiences and spiritual transformations with each other. And we are so much the richer for their sharing. In our reading, Barbara Brown Taylor, the aspiring holy troublemaker, shares her mystical experiences with us. Her father wisely introduced her to direct experiences of transcendent wonder and mystery at a very young age, and I hope you all do that with your children and your grandchildren, or children who are in your life that if you have chosen to be a significant adult to. It was not her father's words that she recalls. It was her own interior sensory and spiritual experiences that she recalls so vividly. When I breathed in, I felt huge to myself. I felt part of the sky as much as a feather on a bird's belly. When I breathed out, I became so small that I feared I might vanish. What was a 7-year-old girl under the weight of the stars? Now, what does all of this have to do with our congregational life as a faith community? I would answer that by asking you more questions. Such a good UU thing to do is to ask more questions. It is hard to talk about mystical experiences in a Unitarian. Is it hard to talk about mystical experiences in a Unitarian Universalist context? In your own congregation, is it hard to talk about those things? Some congregations, yes. Some, no. Is there a subtle, unconscious bias against mysticism because our tradition has long been celebrated, and I think sometimes, although it's improving, overemphasized the intellectual and critical thinking aspects of our tradition? And then there is our UU love affair with words. Oh, how we love words. Words, 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 and more words. Do spiritual experiences that defy words get short shrift in our worship services and our religious education programming? Are we long on intellectualization and short on contemplation? In the past few months, I have had several people ask me if a spirituality based in mysticism is one that really will be affirmed and encouraged by Unitarian Universalist. We have no creed in our faith tradition. However, we do covenant as congregations to affirm and promote 8 principles that guide us in our living so that we live just, loving, and inclusive lives. 2 of those principles are germane to the topic of mysticism within the UU faith community. One is our acceptance of one another and an encouragement of spiritual growth within our congregations. The second one is an understanding that every person has the birthright to a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. And that takes people to different destinations, and it does take some people to mystical experiences. Both of these principles hold the potential for an accepting environment for mystics within our midst. Yes, I think that potential is not always realized. The question put to me by people about acceptance of mysticism by UUs would indicate that we still have work to do. And this person chose not to join a UU church until she could answer that question for herself, because mysticism was a very important part of the core of her spirituality. We have an honorable history with mysticism. Notable are the 19th century's transcendentalists like Ralph Waldo Emerson and Margaret Fuller. If we go even further back to the 16th century, we find Michael Servetus, the Spanish heretic that challenged John Calvin with his treatise entitled On the Errors of the Trinity. And he was a heretic because he proclaimed God is one, not this Trinity formulation that was developed so many years after Jesus died, 300 years to be precise. It is from Servetus' heresy of God as that we get the sense of unity, or our belief that God is one. That Unitarian, and that's where Unitarianism evolved from. God is one. Mystics seek to have deep experiences with this sacred unity, which goes by many names: the Tao, the Great Spirit, the Infinite Mystery, our own Spirit of Life, Mother, Father, Beloved, and God, to name just a few. And present-day UUs are rehabilitating mysticism's undeserved bad name. In 2005, UU Mystics formed UU Mystics in Community and had their first exhibit booth at GA in Fort Worth, Texas, and they also had it at Justice GA this past June. They have a website entitled uumystics.org, so I invite you to go and look at that. And I would also draw your attention to one of the more recent issues of the UU World, our denominational magazine. It has an article entitled Primal Reverence, and it is written by Dr. Kendall Gibbons, who is minister at All Souls UU Church in Kansas City. This article talks about mysticism that requires no supernatural explanations or beliefs. I believe mystics are greatly needed in the UU choir so that we can be the religion of the future, as Einstein describes it. This is what he says about the religion of the future and what its characteristics would be. The religion of the future will be a cosmic religion. It should transcend a personal God and avoid dogma and theology. Covering both the natural and the spiritual, it should be based on a religious sense arising from the experience of all things as a meaningful unity. Finally, let us remember and heed the prophetic words of Albert Einstein once again. And this was a quote when someone in my home congregation knew I was going to preach. I did this sermon at UUCP. She said, "I hope you can work this into something in the service." So this was a quote that is dear to her. And Einstein said, "The intuitive mind is a sacred gift, and the rational mind is a faithful servant. We have created a society that honors the servant and has forgotten the gift." May we as spiritual beings and a UU faith community seek always to honor the transcendent gifts of wonder and mystery. May it be so, and amen. And if you would take your hymnals now and turn to page 126, Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing.
Offers tongues of
Please join me in the reading of the West Valley UU Church's mission statement. This church provides a safe place to celebrate diversity, draw inspiration for our lives, foster social and environmental justice, and compassionately support each other in our spiritual searches.
The words that I will leave with you as closing words are by Hildegard of Bingen, and she was a German nun who lived in a convent on the Rhine. She was an amazing woman. She had a great mind for medicine and science as it was developed at that time. She also was a bit of a feminist, and ultimately with one of her patrons was able to get the convent separated from the monastery because the monks were not allowing the nuns to read and become educated, and Hildegard felt that was extremely important. And so their convent was moved to another location so that they could learn to study and develop their minds as well as their spirits. She has written much music, and if any of you are familiar with the a cappella group Anonymous 4, they do a great deal of her writings and her music. And these are her words. I am that green and fiery force sparkling in everything that lives, in the shining of the river's course, in greening grass that glory gives. I shine and glitter on the seas, in burning sun, in moon and stars, in unseen wind, in verdant trees. I breathe within both near and far, and where I breathe there is no death, and meadows glow with beauty's rife. I am in all the Spirit's breath, the thundered word, for I am life. Blessed be.
Thank you very much, Paul. Please join us for fellowship and coffee and some food.